So beautiful, right? I don't think I've ever done a show, but I haven't loved. Every show has its own character, its own appeal. I'll level it.
Okay. There's very strong connections and there's a very dynamic dialogue between the two bodies of work. In Bettina's case, she's presenting the Drift series, which encompasses different renderings or drawings, very detailed drawings made with graphite on paper. And there's some mixed media, but most of her body of work presented here is very detailed drawings using graphite on paper. Also bringing that human element and how is the intersection between the natural and the human worlds, and that is what I think connects the two artists, the intersections between botany, ecology, the natural world and the human world.
I started the Drift series in January of 2019. I started working on smaller 12 by 18 sheets of paper, and I was essentially like studying each piece of work I found. Some were ones that my father had gifted me, which were the inspiration of the complete series. But I started going for these walks along the beaches. The detailed graphite drawings are a real departure from my practice. In the past, I worked with very gestural expressionistic marks. And for me, I really felt it was important to really focus and experience almost a lifetime through each drawing. So I would start from the top and work my way down. Although they appear to be highly realistic, the more I would focus on one aspect of the driftwood, it would become distorted. So they aren't actually realistic renderings of the driftwood. They almost have a surreal quality to them. In the same way that, you know, as we go through life, there are parts of our lives that we really magnify in importance, and certain parts drift away as well.
This is almost like a collection of portraits, of detailed portraits that each have their own personality, each evoke a form, a shape that really tells you a story, but it's a visual story that you make up as you see the details in each rendering of each piece of driftwood. When you come into the gallery, the first thing you see is the sand series. And there are 3 large scale drawings with a very detailed rendering of the sand as the backdrop or the background of these beautiful pieces of driftwood that also almost evoke bone structures and aging joints of the trees that also evoke the human body, the human aging process.
Raft is the only work in the series that has more than one piece. And I felt it was important to include because it represents connection. So although each piece is individual, they all relate and connect on a certain level. With Deep Drift, I was referencing imprinting, X-ray. I wanted to give the impression of something that looks on a deeper level. Vessel, which was part of a series that I completed quite a few years ago, looked at the idea of location, of where we find homes, how we find homes, what makes a home. And that is one piece that I kept in my place. I think what sort of stuck with me was the whole idea of using driftwood for that piece. None of the other pieces really focused that much on driftwood from that series. And I kept the original pieces, the inspirations, the original pieces that were given to me by my father around my studio. And so they were constant sources of inspiration for my drawing. And then I really started looking at the individual pieces. My father and I always shared a common interest in the visual arts. And I really believe that he always had that inner artist in him that wanted to come out. And as he journeyed through dementia, those parts of his personality remained the strongest. Those came to life. And it was the pieces of driftwood, through them, that he was able to finally express that. As all the other parts faded away, it was his creativity that really came to the forefront of who he was. Why these pieces? Why were they all tree collars? Why were they all branch attachments? And then I sort of came up with the inspiration of doing a whole complete series that looked at the whole process of aging, how we as humans evolve and how certain things we hold on to and certain things drop away. I really wanted to focus and celebrate those aspects of people that become even more special as they age and stronger.
So here we are presenting a very exciting component of the exhibition, and is actually when we present the actual subjects of the work that Bettina is presenting on the Whisper number 1, number 2, number 3 series here on the back, that are more energetic, are more embodied movement of the artist.
The large pieces in the back are mixed media on mylar, and they are drawn with very gestural, energetic mark making. And the reason for this, and the reason why they're so different, is that I wanted people to be evoked, to feel an emotion, and to maybe reflect back on their lives.
These are free-form, wild renderings of that embodied and almost human scale representations of the portraits that are actually in front of them, or the actual real driftwood shape that are in front of them. And you can see almost like the spirit of them is kind of taken from each piece of driftwood and represented back on the large scale paper. In the Elemental Landscape series that Judy Witherford is presenting here, we see a cluster of images that include some botanical and some mineral and some landscapes that document the passage of time and the ever-changing qualities of the natural world. But it's also somehow mirroring, say, this photo of the lava landscape. It's also mirroring somehow those features in the driftwood pieces that Bettina also created. Is also that passage of time. It's almost that glimpse into deep geological time.
Black and white is already a level of abstraction because we see in color. And so black and white makes you actually look at the form more. I think it also expresses, it's better at expressing rawness and intensity of feeling. And that's another reason why I chose this, because I'm dealing with a vast, almost timeless scale of change.
The second series is called Falling Water. And here you can see a collection of 4 photographs that capture water in motion in a given moment and a given time that will never repeat again. In this case, the artist is showing a moment that somehow has a very subtle presence, but also dramatic at the same time. And in a way that shows her own personal experience as someone who has a contemplative practice and meditation practice, but at the same time is this force in movement that is the human experience and the experience of life itself that you can see through these photographs.
The camera reveals what I can never see with the naked eye, and yet it preserves a record. And also, ironically, at the very moment that that record is taken, when the shutter clicks, at that moment, that precise moment, that moment has ceased to exist and will never exist again.